Throughout Legends' 5-year run, there's always been units that stood at the top of the meta, ruling PvP and making people cry. But who dominated PvP for the longest period of time? Well, in this one, we're going to be going through some of the most meta-breaking units ever released and compare them to see who truly was the most dominating unit ever. So let's go. So when it comes to meta-shattering units, there's always a few iconic units that come to mind. Specifically, Dragon Ball Super Broly, Namek Goku, Vegito Blue, Zenkai FSK Gohan, and Beast Gohan. I think people can agree that these units were amongst the most broken units ever, but there's also a couple other units I want to add to the mix. Ultra Super Gogeta, Tag Android 17 and 18, as well as Tag Goku and Frieza. Now personally, I don't think these units were on the same level as the previously mentioned units, but I do think they are easily the best units in the game on their release and kind of held that spot for a while, which is why I wanted to include them. So let's start off with them. Ultra Super Gogeta, the first ever summonable Ultra unit, and boy did he feel like it. Completely ruling PvP on his release. His kit was absolutely fantastic and allowed him to age amazingly, basically remaining in the top 5 up until Beast Gohan's release, which was 9 months after his own release. There wasn't really any opposition to him when he dropped until the release of the second summonable Ultra unit 3 months later, Super Saiyan Blue Kaioken Goku. These two shared the spotlight at the top, effectively ending the reign of Ultra Super Gogeta at 3 months after his release. Next, we come to the Tag Android 17 and 18. These guys were quite the problem on release, being basically ahead of everyone, even the prior two Ultras. They were so dominant that even the two 4th anniversary LFs were not able to surpass them, which eventually led to the drop of the 3rd Ultra unit, Super Vegito, to finally dethrone them. Though some would argue even the droids were still number 1, further being a testament to how dominant they truly were. Regardless, with the release of USV, they were no longer the undisputed number 1 unit in the game, meaning their reign lasted around 3 months. For the last one in this category, we have Tag, Goku, and Frieza. Now, these guys are a bit unique in the sense that they were not the overwhelming force we see today. They needed a monstrous buff to propel them to the current level. Some would argue that was one of the worst changes ever made, but unfortunately it happened and now they're ridiculous. Even with the release of Ultra Vegito Blue, these guys are still considered to be top 1, especially since UVB is currently being countered by a lot of the meta. Even during UVB's prime, some still consider Go Frieza to be the best unit in the game, so you could argue his reign is still ongoing to this day. They have currently been number 1 for around 3 months as well, but who knows how long this will continue for. Hopefully not too long. Now that we got these guys out of the way, let's move on to the true meta breakers. Starting off with the first one, Dragon Ball Super Broly. This unit, in my opinion, was the most oppressive unit ever released. Most people might not agree with this, but for me he was, and a lot of that has to do with the fact that I never was able to pull him on his release, which made it extremely bad fighting him. You're basically given a 50% chance to win once you queue into a match versus him if you did not have him as well. He was also the centerpiece of the Holy Trinity, which involved him, Super Saiyan Bardock, and Red Super Saiyan Gogeta. Broly was just so ahead of his time, especially considering the fact that they had to nerf the ability to regain Vanish while using Blast Armor in order to somewhat nerf this unit. A lot of units in this category force actual game mechanics to be nerfed or changed, which is crazy. His dominance lasted around until the release of Transforming Gogeta, and then further on with the release of Yellow Perfect Cell and FSK Gohan, which puts his reign around 3 to 4 months. Next up, we have Beast Gohan. People don't like to admit this, but his meta was easily just as bad as the Vegito Blue meta. Sure, he didn't actually force any game mechanics to be changed, but his meta was as boring as it can get. 99.9% of matches in PvP were him paired with Pan and Future Gohan. His release was also what people considered the last real meta reset, where all the units released before simply were unable to perform in top rank PvP. They simply gave this unit basically every single mechanic that was available at the time, which led them to create new and unique mechanics for future LF/Ultra units. He dominated pretty much up until the release of Ultra Gogeta Blue, and even then it was pretty close between them as well. This puts his reign at around 2 months. Now we approach the big 3 of meta breakers in Legends, starting off with OG LF Namek Goku. Some would argue he was the most broken character ever released and the closest thing to a cheat code in this game. His blue card practically countered every attack and would basically one-shot most units. In addition, his playstyle was extremely boring, sitting back at long range until the opponent went for an attack. This forced the devs to create countermeasures such as losing ki and vanish when you backfloat, as well as buffing tackles so they would reach the opponent when they backfloat from mid-range. It was truly an annoying experience when you queued up against him. Some could argue Super Vegeta was still stronger, but Namek Goku was clearly the most broken unit at the time. Because of the changes to the game mechanics made his oppressiveness a bit more tamed, his reign as the undisputed best unit in the game didn't last the longest, around 1 to 2 months or so, unless my memory is betraying me. So I don't exactly remember what happened after his release, so if you guys want to let me know, definitely let me know. Next, we move on to LF Vegito Blue. People tend to have PTSD of fighting this guy because his combos would practically never end. And one of the main reasons for this is because he has the ability to draw up to 2 strike cards after using 1. But the biggest reason is that back when he released, you were only able to cover change once during a combo. Nowadays, you can cover change as many times as possible, but this was not the case back when VB was released. They were forced to change this simply because VB would combo your units into the ground and there was nothing you can do about it. Also, his Future/Fusion Warrior setups were easily the best in the game, and he was also the first unit to have cover null. Granted, it was only on his ultimate, which was also the first ever ultimate to have the supreme damage modifier. Overall, he was just an absolutely broken unit. However, his reign was cut short to around 2 months by a fucking red unit who's up next. Finally, we come to the last unit, Zenkai Super Saiyan 2 Gohan. He is without a doubt the most absurd creation this game has ever seen. He single-handedly cut LF Vegito Blue's range short despite being a red unit. His blast cards were simple nuclear bombs, practically one-shotting any unit at the time. But what's the most scariest is when you think you're gonna win simply because he's the only unit left on the team. Nah, that's when you basically lose the match. His main allowed him to go neutral, and at that point, no one is saving you from what he was about to do. This went on for months and was only fueled even more with the release of LF Revival Super Saiyan 2 Gohan back during the 3rd anniversary, which allowed him to dominate for even more months until Legends Festival. This puts his overall reign at a measly 15 months, completely destroying any semblance of competition. This situation will never be replicated ever again, which means Zenkai FSK Gohan will forever be the most dominant unit ever released. So that basically covers the whole list of meta breakers and which one was the most dominant for which period of time. Definitely let me know what you think, or if you think there was a unit I should have mentioned as well, because it's definitely possible. So hope you guys enjoyed this video. If you did, please leave a like and don't forget to subscribe because it's so important, so don't forget. Other than that, have a great day. See ya.